the broad range topic of our conversation, the music of DNA, and that we have our own individual tones. When we're at our healthiest, there is a specific tone that we can vibe with, and then when there's interference, our tone kind of gets a little off. How can we find our own tone? You're talking about like singing into resonance.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not sure that I would use the word tone. It's not that simple. You know, what we really are, we're a collection of many different rhythms. Your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your digestive rate, the speed at which you think, your what speed your adrenals are going. And every single vibrational pattern in your body makes up a very wide range of frequencies and sounds and expressions. What we're really looking for is harmony. We're looking for things to be in the right rhythm, right? If our heart is going too fast, it's going to mess us up in all kinds of ways. So we want our heart rhythm to be groovy. We want our the way that our mind works, the way that our emotions move through us, to be in integrity, to be in alignment, to be in tune. So everybody has their own tone, what I call a tonal sweet spot, which is essentially, I would say, a state of healthy contentedness, where one can be present and calm and alert and receptive and able to hear and able to feel and really open and in tune, and be able to interact with other people in an in tune way. When we've got our liver is all out of whack and we've got all this suppressed anger and heat, and that liver isn't making the right sound, it's not playing well with the heart or the digestive tract. So, and these tendencies, for when we talk about disease running in families, is also influenced by the pattern of vibration in the body. If heart disease runs in your family, there might be a tendency of people being hard-hearted, of not being loving and tender and soft and available and kind. Maybe there's been just a history of unkindness, no hugs, no I love you, misunderstandings, not communicating our truth. All of that hardens the heart. So that's a tonal tendency running through a family that has a physical effect on the body.
Hmm. Okay, so then going back to the idea of DNA being comparable to music, I know we've all sort of been taught that it's a fixed chemistry, that the DNA is what it is and it cannot change. And I know that the DNA itself cannot change, but it can express differently. So let's talk about how the DNA can be compared to music.
Hmm. Well, it's flowing information. It's flowing information. We're connected. Our DNA is connected back in time all the way to its origin. And what is it? It's a stream, a song, a story flowing through time, going from body to body to body. There's a whole song there. There's a whole story. You could even turn it into a song. What's the song of your story, of your ancestors? Can you make that into sound? Is it sad? Is it heavy? Is it contentious? Is it what's the general tone? What's the story? And is that showing up in your life? And can you change it? And what would changing it look like? The first thing is believing it's even possible. When I think that the way of looking at everything as fixed chemistry is really coming to an end. We really do understand and have understood for over a century, and actually for millennia, that everything is fundamentally vibration and waves, and only appears solid due to an artifact of the limitations of our human perception. So everything is flowing and fluid and dynamic. There's really no such thing as a noun. Everything is a fluid, dynamic, flowing process and a relationship. And things change within generations very quickly. So that's an old limited view that I think that we're going to really be abandoning in this next few years as we start to open more and more to the aha understanding of the essential vibrational nature of everything. And that becomes a more of a mainstream and understood way of perceiving reality, in which case shifting the music of our flowing DNA isn't such a foreign concept. It doesn't even, we could do it in an instant with a thought, if that's, just becoming aware of the noise. And here's the thing is that what I've discovered is that the codes for health are in nature. And we can go out into nature, find some pristine nature and be there and allow ourselves to absorb that information. Because so much of our illness is arising from our separation from nature. Our natural selves, our animal human selves. Our animal human selves, our predecessors lived in harmony with the natural world. And their DNA was in harmony with their environment. And as generations have gone on and we've become more and more domesticated and more penned, and it has brought up more and more stress and more distortion into this signal. And so just as situations created distortion, new situations can be created that restore harmony. It's not really that hard when you think about it. And when your mind starts to enter into this fluid nature. You asked another thing about how we can change it. And you asked about if we can do it ourselves with tuning forks or if we need to see a practitioner. I always want to bring up what's free and easy first, but you can shift it yourself with a tuning fork to a degree. People can work on themselves, their own energy bodies. And we do this by projecting a hologram, imagining that your own body is on a bed or a couch or a treatment table, and then moving the tuning fork in towards it until you hit that ancestral river. And you'll hear and feel the tone change. You'll be about 10 inches off where you imagine your shoulder to be. You will find that ancestral river. And you might feel different there. You might have certain emotions arise in you or a sense of things. You might hear different tones. And the amazing thing is that all you have to do is hang out there and your body will do the work. It will work with that input and it will start to tune itself. Now, I always think it's better to have a buddy when you do things, and seeing a practitioner is great. We do this remotely as well. But if that's not doable for you, you can always get a tuning fork and try it yourself. But I will tell you that the quality of tuning fork really makes a difference. Poor quality, inexpensive tuning forks aren't going to give you the clear feedback that a good one will. And so that's just something to keep in mind. If you try to approach something like this, real sound healing on your own with a cheap tool, you're not going to get anywhere. I've used enough cheap tools and good tools to know the difference, and it's pretty significant. Yeah.
Right. Now, having worked with you in the past on your Shift Network courses, I know the question that listeners are hearing right now is, what tuning fork should I use for this specific work? Is it the sonic slider? Is it one of the others? What would be best for this specific purpose?
Well, if you have the sonic slider, you can certainly use it, because I know a lot of my shift peeps already do have the sonic slider, and I've probably already learned about the ancestral river, but this might be inspiring you to go check it out and pay it a visit. When you use a weighted tuning fork, you will only experience a feeling sense of what is there. When you use an unweighted tuning fork, like the 174 hertz one, that's my primary fork, because it's just at the right frequency where there's a lot of information in the overtones. There's a lot of depth, and I just get a lot of information. The higher you go in frequency, the harder it is to tease out information from the overtones. So I know a lot of people have believe that the 528 hertz fork repairs DNA. Okay. I'm going to argue with that. I think any fork can repair DNA, because the DNA is self-repairing when it's given the right input, and simply a coherent input held in the right place gives the DNA the information it needs to reorganize. to reorganize, to reorder itself. So 528 hertz is not the only frequency in the world that does that. Okay. If you have a 528 hertz fork, you can use it. If you have a 174 hertz fork, you can definitely use it. If I would recommend getting my 174 hertz fork because it's really designed for this. I spent 2 years in R&D developing my own alloy that is specifically designed for really listening and feeling deeply into those overtones. It's a very high quality tool. So, and then you can, you know, if you're curious, you can just use that fork to just comb through the field of your pets, of your plants, of your people, and see what you notice. What I found, most people when they start off tend to be more kinesthetic than auditory, where you'll actually feel the resistance and feel the turbulence before you start to hear the nuances in the sound. But if you just keep listening, you'll find that your hearing will open up and you'll start to hear different tones, and they're really like music. So the way that I was able to map the field and determine that different emotions had different frequency signatures was really in the same way that, like, Lisa, if you and I are listening to a sad song, I don't need to tell you that it's a sad song. You don't need to tell me it's a sad song. We just know it's a sad song. And it's the same with finding emotions in the field. It sounds sad, or it sounds angry, or it sounds alarmed, or it sounds depressed. And we have our own knowing and our own resonance there. And the biggest obstacle that people have when they're learning to do this is that they just don't trust themselves. It's their own self-doubt. Like, how could I know this? Because you're a resonant being and you know it. So you can do it on yourself, and you can do it with a weighted or an unweighted fork, and you can also have somebody else do it with you.
Okay. Now, I understand that you offer training, so if people want to go beyond what we're talking about here, the basics, they can absolutely pursue this. But again, for just today's purposes, if somebody did want to make this effort and they want to work on themselves, they've got the tuning fork, and you said that they can project the hologram of themselves, perhaps lying on a bed. For those who don't quite grasp what that means, maybe a little bit of explanation would be
Yeah,
helpful.
absolutely. And I find that people always want to make this more complicated than it is. Okay. Everybody thinks that this should be way harder. And when I say project a hologram, they're like, what? It's so simple. You just imagine that you're there. Period. That's it. I mean, I say project a hologram because it fills in a little more detail of, like, I'm going to use my imagination to see and to pretend and to visualize and to experience my own body is lying right there. Now, I know it sounds so easy and so far out. It works. It works. Our minds work in ways that we're not taught in school. And when you start to explore and discover how our minds work, we don't learn about ether. We don't learn about ether physics. That doesn't mean that ether doesn't exist and that ether physics isn't a thing in nature. It is. And that's what I've learned from working with sound, working with subtle energy, working at a distance, that there's all kinds of natural laws here. People are like, well, how does it work at a distance? I'm like, well, the hypothesis has been tested hundreds of thousands of times, and it always produces the same outcome. So there must be a natural law that governs this. Mm-hmm. Resonance in the ether is what I call it. And one of the properties of the ether is the ability to imagine yourself there and say, and when you're very clear and you're very commanding and you're very directive, the ether responds. And so you just imagine, you can put a marker. This is where the midline of my body is, or this is where the edge of my shoulder is. And I'm going to start from about 20 inches away, and I'm going to move in slowly. And when I get to be about 10 inches, I'm going to feel for resistance, and I'm going to open my ears, and then I'm just going to see what I notice. And just keep breathing. That's the most important part. You want to make sure that you keep breathing, because you'll find when you get into dissonant information, it makes you want to hold your breath. And so a big part of shifting and of releasing and relaxing is releasing the breath and deepening the breath. And I will say that in my sessions, especially over this last year, what I'm really finding is that as old patterns start to de-pattern, there's often a feeling that arises up in the body of wanting to shake and shimmy and really move the body to just shake off that old pattern and depattern it. Now, there is a form of healing about releasing trauma, and they do get people to shake because animals do that. The gazelle gets chased by the lion and then it gets away and then it'll shake it off, or two animals encounter each other, will shake it off. As humans, we tend to lock it in and suppress it. And so we have all of this sort of locked in pain and discomfort and distortion in our systems. And part of becoming a new person and having a new experience is shaking off those old patterns and stories and allowing ourselves to vibrate down into a cleaner, like a sonically cleaned, more harmonious state. So if anybody out there does do this on yourself, if you're starting and you get in the ancestral river and you feel the need to shake and shimmy and move and stomp and make some sound, do it. Because that's that healing of your own voice and body.